Hi everybody, time for a little story that's going to be leading into some of our creative writing. Now, I think some of you are familiar with this book, The Mysteries of Harris Burdick by Chris Van Allsburg. I think you may have even done some writing with the pictures from last year, and that's going to be what we'll be doing for our last big writing project of the year. So let's read this. And this is such a cool book, cool premise. I really think he's a great writer. So, introduction. I first saw the writings in this book a year ago in the home of a man named Peter Wenders. Though Mr. Wenders is retired now, he once worked for a children's book publisher, choosing the stories and pictures that would be turned into books. 30 years ago, a man called at Peter Wenders' office, introducing himself as Harris Burdick. Mr. Burdick explained that he had written 14 stories and had drawn many pictures for each one. He brought with him just one drawing from each to see if Mr. Wenders liked his work. Peter Wenders was fascinated by the drawings. He told Burdick he would like to read the stories that went with them as soon as possible. The artist agreed to bring the stories the next morning. He left the 14 drawings with Wenders, but he did not return the next day, or the day after that. Harris Burdick was never heard from again. Over the years, Wenders tried to find out who Burdick was and what had happened to him, but he discovered nothing. To this day, Harris Burdick remains a complete mystery. His disappearance is not the only mystery left behind. What were the stories that went with the drawings? There are some clues. Burdick had written a title and caption for each picture. When I told Peter Wenders how difficult it was to look at the drawings and their captions without imagining a story, he smiled and left the room. He returned with a dust-covered cardboard box. Inside were dozens of stories, all inspired by Burdick drawings. They'd been written years ago by Wenders' children and their friends. I spent the rest of my visit reading these stories. They were remarkable, some bizarre, some funny, some downright scary. In the hope that other children will be inspired by them, the Burdick drawings are reproduced here for the first time. Chris Van Allsburg, Providence, Rhode Island. So, copyright on this book, is 1984. So if we do a little math, a year ago would make it 1983, and 30 years before that would make it 1953. So this really is a very curious story. And Chris Van Allsburg dedicated it with thanks to Peter Wenders. All right, so this picture, titled Archie Smith, Boy Wonder. A tiny voice asked, "Is he the one?" Just looking at the picture, what could be talking? And what would he be the one of? This is one of my favorite pictures called Under the Rug. 2 weeks passed and it happened again. This guy, you could tell by his face, seems quite disturbed, angry, and ready to wallop whatever is under the rug. A strange day in July. He threw with all his might, but the third stone came skipping back. Now, if you've ever done this at a lake or at a pond, skip stones, throwing them across the water to see how many times you could skip. But this third stone keeps coming back. So very interesting. This one's entitled Missing in Venice. Even with her mighty engines in reverse, the ocean liner was pulled further and further into the canal. So very curious. That big ship is going to cause some destruction, and why is it being pulled all the way in? Where's that ocean liner from? Where are the people in these houses? Very interesting. Another place, another time. If there was an answer, he'd find it there. This one, you have to look super closely at it. You see the kids, and it looks maybe like their parents. They're going on the railroad track. And if you don't look closely, you will not see right here. Looks to be possibly a castle, maybe a church. I'm not sure. But maybe they'll find the answer there. And the answer to what is the other question. Uninvited guests. His heart was pounding. He was sure he had seen the doorknob turn. A little door here. When I was young, there was a TV show. I only had 2 channels, CBC, CTV. And on CBC, Sundays, they would have Fraggle Rock, which was kind of like the Muppets show. And they had these Fraggles living in a secret world, and they had a little tunnel inside somebody's house. But to have a little tiny door like that is interesting. Is it tiny? Maybe this guy right here is a giant. Maybe this is a regular sized door. Because look how big he seems to be. Anyways, a lot of things to think about. This one's called The Harp. So it's true, he thought. It's really true. So this looks like a very peaceful area along a river. There's someone, I don't know if that's a boy or a man, dog, and there's the harp. Again, how big is this harp? Is it perspective? Are these guys super small, super big? A lot to think. Oh, I've never noticed this before either. This looks like something just splashed into the water. Wow, that would create so many different ideas. This one's Mr. Linden's library. He had warned her about the book. Now it was too late. I'll let your imagination run wild on this one. This one's called The 7 Chairs. The 5th one ended up in France. Okay, so this is a church. This is a nun. These look to be like priests. This must be a massive cathedral in France. And that's the 5th chair of 7. Where are the other 6? And why is she floating on it? The 3rd floor bedroom. It all began when someone left the window open. So you look, and if very carefully, you can see this bird, its wing is coming undone. Or are these all birds in there? Is this maybe a tree wall? I always thought maybe it's like a wallpaper, but your imagination can go wild with this. Just desert. She lowered the knife and it grew even brighter. Now I did scans of the pictures. This one came out pretty good. She's holding a knife to this glowing pumpkin. So if you're interested in that. Captain Torrey, he swung his lantern 3 times and slowly the schooner appeared. And a schooner is a boat. And this looks foggy out. It looks very mysterious. This one's Oscar and Alphonse. She knew it was time to send them back. The caterpillar softly wiggled in her hand, spelling out goodbye. And very carefully, there they are. The House on Maple Street. It was a perfect liftoff. I know you're looking at this picture and thinking right away of Up. But there's no balloons. And this one looks like a rocket ship taking off. And that's an old car right there. So that is it for the pictures. And hopefully you'll be inspired, and I'll do another video explaining what our creative writing project will look like. So hopefully you enjoy the mysteries of Harris Burdick.